of the masks, the basically 8 masks and all of their millions of archetypes and subcategories. And today we're going to talk about the relationship mask. And that's on the identity that says, if everybody else is okay, I'm okay. See, there's a kind of care that looks from the outside like one of the most admirable qualities a person can have. I mean, it's attentive and generous, reliably present for the people around it. It reads the room, notices when someone is struggling before that person has even said a word, and it anticipates needs. It moves toward difficulty rather than away from it. It holds people. It makes people feel seen. And it is in its most defended form, a mask. Not because care is bad, because caring is not bad, right? Care for people is not bad. But this relationship mask, this particular kind of care is not primarily about the person being cared for. It's about the stability of the person doing the caring. And that distinction, invisible to nearly everyone who witnesses it, is the difference between love expressed freely and identity organized around the management of other people's emotional states. So the relationships mask is the identity that has learned, if the people around me are okay, I am okay. If the room is harmonious, I'm safe. Hey, no one's upset, I must be acceptable. The specific form it takes varies. Sometimes it is the person who makes everyone feel comfortable before they feel anything themselves. Sometimes it's the person who mediates every conflict before it can fully form. And sometimes it's the parent who carries the emotional weight of the entire household. Sometimes it's the partner who tracks their person's mood with a precision that would be impressive if it were not so exhausting. And sometimes it's the friend everybody calls when things fall apart. Not because the friend is especially equipped, but because that friend has made being the one who holds things together their primary relational identity. In each of these cases, the structure is the same. The person's sense of okayness is contingent on the emotional state of people in their life, people around them. Their internal weather, per se, is determined externally. And because they cannot control the internal states of other people, no matter how skilled they become at managing them, they live in a state of perpetual low-grade vigilance, scanning the room, reading faces, monitoring the temperature, adjusting the response, trying to stay ahead of the disruption that might, if it arrives, tell them they have failed. So I want to name the origin of this clearly because it's one of the most important things you can understand about this mask. The relationships mask almost always formed in an environment where a child became responsible in some real and functional sense for the emotional state of at least one adult, not because the adult demanded it or asked for it explicitly, because the child, with the hyperacuity that children in certain emotional environments develop, they learn that if they manage the adult's emotional experience correctly, the environment became safer and more stable, predictable. That child became very good at reading the room. They developed extraordinary emotional intelligence. They learned to anticipate, to soothe, to deflect and redirect and smooth over. They became functionally a small emotional caretaker in an environment that needed one. And they did it because it worked. It produced stability, and stability was the thing that they needed the most. The problem is the same problem as every other mask, though. The adaptation did not stay in the environment it was built for. It came with them into adulthood, marriages, friendship, jobs, communities. So the hypervigilance that was a survival tool in an unstable childhood became the operating system of every significant relationship in their adult life. And the question that the mask was built to prevent them from ever having to sit with, whether they're okay, independent of whether everyone around them is okay. This question has never genuinely been answered, right? And it comes with a great cost. And I want to spend a significant time on the cost of this mask because it is one of the most concealed of all the masks. The resume mask, person, they usually know at some level that their relationship with productivity is problematic. The relationships mask person often does not know this at all because the cost is distributed across other people rather than sitting visibly in their own experience. The first cost of the relationship mask is self-erasure. A person whose emotional experience is primarily organized around the emotional states of others has very limited access to their own inner space, their own interior life. And it's not because they're not feeling things. They feel things really at enormous intensity, but their feelings rather are almost always referential. They are about other people in the room rather than their own experience as a distinct individual. So when I ask strong relationship mask person what they want, not what they think would be good for the situation or the relationship or the other people involved, but what they actually want, I get this long pause and then a few broken ideas or sentences that really just are uncertainty, genuine uncertainty. And the question is not one that they have been in the habit of asking. So they're caught off guard. This self-erasure accumulates over time into something that can eventually become a crisis of identity. A person who has organized their entire sense of self around others often arrives, particularly in midlife, at a moment where the others change. Children leave, a marriage ends or evolves, a parent dies, the community shifts, the role that the mask has been built around disappears or is no longer needed in the same way, and the person is left with a question they have never genuinely answered, and that now cannot be deferred, right? Who am I when I'm not taking care of someone? Who am I if no one needs anything from me? First, self-erasure, first cost. Second cost is resentment. And this is one of the most painful to examine because it is in direct conflict with the identity. See, the relationships mask person doesn't think of themselves as someone who carries resentment. They think of themselves as generous and caring and giving. The resentment is not performed. It's not even genuinely acknowledged, but it's there. And they argue that's not there. I argued for years that I had no resentment. Because giving from an identity rather than from genuine desire is not free. It's slavery. It's giving with an invisible contract, an invisible expectation. And when the expectation is not met, and it will not always be met because other people in the relationship did not sign up for the contract and they don't know its terms, resentment is the result. I've sat with hundreds of people wearing this mask over the last 2 years who genuinely did not know they were angry. They would describe themselves as patient and accommodating, who'd spent years in relationships where they had been consistently over-functioning while the other person under-functioned, and who told themselves a story about this arrangement that cast it as care rather than pattern. And then something happened, a moment of genuine clarity or a crisis that cracked the arrangement open, and the resentment, there it was, sitting right there. It was not small, and it was large and long-standing. And they had no framework for it because the mask told them they never even had the right to it. The third cost is the particular quality of relationship the mask produces. A relationship mask person, operating at full capacity rather, it is extraordinarily skilled at making other people feel cared for, and the relationships that result are real and often genuinely loving. But they have a ceiling, and that ceiling is the point at which the other person in the relationship would need to stop receiving and start giving. And at that point, the relationships mask person, whose entire identity is organized around being the one who holds things, finds it very difficult to allow the inversion. They've been trained to give. They are profoundly uncomfortable receiving, and a relationship in which one person consistently gives and the other consistently receives is not a relationship. It is not a relationship of equals, even. It is a dynamic. In dynamics, however lovingly they are in their establishment or in their birth, they are not intimacy. There's also a particular effect on the people being cared for. A person who's managed, even skillfully, knows at some level that they're being managed. The warmth is genuine, but the oversight is also present, almost a little slightly controlling. The attention is real, but it comes with monitoring. And over time, the relationship can develop a quality that the other person can't quite name, but it produces in them a desire for more space. Just need a little space. More room to be imperfect without producing the careful response. Some space to struggle without immediately being helped, right? This is the paradox of the relationship's mask. The care that is meant to produce closeness can, at its most intense, produce exactly the distance it was trying to prevent. So let's talk a minute about the invisible contract. What the relationship's mask is actually built on is what I call, and many people call, the invisible contract. It's a set of terms that the mask wearer has with the people around them that are never stated, never negotiated, never agreed to by the other party, and yet the mask wearer, often unaware of themselves, enforces them and experiences real pain when they're violated. The basic terms of the contract, sort of like, I'll give you extraordinary care, attention, and emotional management, and I will anticipate your needs before you voice them. I will be available when you are struggling. I will smooth over the difficulties in a relationship so that conflict is just about non-existent. I'm going to prioritize your well-being. In return, you're going to see my worth through your need of me. You're not going to withdraw. You're not going to choose others over me, and you're not going to be okay without me in ways that make my caretaking feel unnecessary. And most importantly, you not demand of me the one thing I cannot give, the presence of my actual self, unmanaged and unperforming. And nobody'd sign up for that, right? The contract is invisible because it was never spoken, and it is a source of profound pain because the people in the relationship cannot meet its terms. Not because they don't want to, they don't know the terms are there. The relationship's masked person experiences the violation of the contract, the friend who gets better without their help, the partner who is genuinely fine when the caretaking stops for a day, the adult child who no longer needs the particular management they once required. They take it as abandonment or diminishment, as evidence that the care was not valued, when in fact, it is evidence that the relationship is healthy enough that the other person can be well on their own. Learning to see the invisible contract is one of the most liberating things a relationship masked person can do. Because once you see it, once you can see it, you can ask the question that the contract was designed to avoid. What do I actually want from this relationship outside of being needed? What would it mean to be in this relationship as a fully present, genuinely distinct person who has needs of their own and allows the other person to be imperfect without managing the imperfection? See, that question is not comfortable, but it is the question that points towards something real. I want to describe what genuine care looks like when the mask is not organizing it, because I'm not arguing against care. I'm describing the difference between care that is free and care that is a performance of identity. Genuine care is not compulsive. It has a quality of choice. And in that, the person who is genuinely caring is someone who could, without significant inner consequences and emotional consequences, choose not to care for the person in front of them and still feel fundamentally okay about themselves. The caring is not what is holding their sense of self together. It's an expression of something that lives in them that would be there whether or not the caretaking was happening. Genuine care is also permissive of the other person's fullness. It allows for the other person to be struggling without moving in immediately, to be in difficulty without being managed, to be able to make mistakes without the mistakes being smoothed over before the person has even had a chance to experience or contemplate the consequences. Genuine care trusts the other person with their own experience. And that trust is in itself a profound form of respect. I should talk about that. The movement toward this from the relationships mask begins with a single practice, and the practice of it's just the practice of noticing in the moment before you move towards someone who's struggling. Notice whether the movement is coming from genuine desire or from discomfort with their struggle, whether you're moving toward them for their sake or for yours. This is not a practice designed to make you cold or withholding. It's a practice designed to make the care conscious rather than compulsive. And conscious care is a gift. Compulsive care is a transaction and a chain. Picture a version of your life where the people you love are genuinely loved by you without the monitoring, where a friend can be going through something difficult and you can be present without needing to fix it, where your partner can have a bad day and you can be available without the day being experienced as something you're responsible for maintaining the proper status or managing, where you can sit at dinner with people you care about and be present rather than running the temperature check. Picture knowing what you want, not in the abstract, in the specific, on a given evening, in a given conversation. When someone asks you what you would like, having an answer that is genuinely yours rather than a calculation of what will produce the least friction. Picture bringing yourself into a room, actually your true self, and staying there regardless of whether the room initially knows what to do with you. The relationships mask says you're only safe when everyone around you is okay. Your actual identity says you are okay, fully and without condition. And from that okayness, you can care for others without needing the caring to confirm your worth. That's the difference between the mask and the face. And the face has been there the entire time. Continue soon. I'm James Tippins, and this is Unbound. Freedom